Over the past few decades, something unusual has started to happen in many Western societies. On the one hand, we have record wealth, we have longer life expectancies, and we have more comfort and convenience than we ever had. But on the other hand, people also report feeling worse. There is more loneliness, more depression, more anxiety, and in general, just more feelings of emptiness and disconnection. And this is not just anecdotal. Large population studies show the same pattern across countries, across age groups, and over long periods of time. In the United States, for example, over 60% of adults report moderate to high loneliness, and this number has been rising for more than a decade now. In the United Kingdom, chronic loneliness among people that are over 16 years old has increased by more than 25% since the early 2000s. And the rates of major depressive disorder in Western countries has roughly doubled among adults under 30 since the 1980s. A large global meta-analysis found that loneliness is associated with a 26% increase of premature death, which is comparable in scale to smoking around 15 cigarettes a day. These patterns seem to point to something deeper going on. In societies that emphasize individualism, independence, and personal achievement, also show higher levels of psychological suffering. So the question is not whether people want connection, but the question is why are biological systems that are evolved to regulate connection failing to reproduce a stable sense of meaning for so many people? So this video is about connectedness. We will talk about why it's essential for meaning. We'll talk about how it works biologically. We'll talk about how people and groups you bond with shape your inner life and your behavior, and what the brain chemistry of connection actually does, and finally, how to use this knowledge to your advantage. This is part 3 of a 4-part series on the biology of meaning. In part 1, we discussed progress, and which is modulated by the system dopamine. It's involved in movement, in learning, in growth. In part 2 of the series, we talked about direction, which is modulated by serotonin, and it's involved in your values, your long-term orientation, and with your psychological stability over time. In today's video, we'll talk about the third pillar of meaning, which is connectedness, and the system evolution created to make it work, the oxytocin system. So, the big picture. These 3 systems, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, together form the biological foundation of meaning. And in this video series, we use the nested pyramid of meaning as a framework for meaning based on biology. According to this framework, we exist inside nested social structure, which are all dependent on each other. I'll start with an example. Okay, you exist as a person. You have to make progress in life, you have to have a direction in life, and you have to be connected to other people. And the first layer you are connected to is your close friends. And your close friends can exist inside a bigger social structure. For example, your team at work. And your team at work can exist inside a bigger social structure, like a bigger team at work or a special part of the company. This social structure exists inside an even bigger social structure, which is, for example, your company. The company you work in, that has different teams. And this social structure can exist inside a bigger social structure, like a franchise of companies. And these franchises can also exist inside a bigger social structure, which is society, or it can be a country. And this country exists ultimately inside humanity, inside the whole world. Meaning stabilizes when your personal goals align with your social environment. When your daily interactions with others, of course, support your growth, and when your presence within a social group has real impact, and when your absence in a social environment would be noticed. So let's define connectedness here to make it a little easier. Connectedness in this model is how your life becomes embedded in a functioning social system that reinforces progress and direction in the lived experience. Okay, to make it a little bit easier, connectedness is when what you do each day matters to others, and when what others do matters to you. So the connectedness is modulated by a biological system which is called the oxytocin system. So what is oxytocin? Well, oxytocin is a neuropeptide, and is produced mainly inside of the hypothalamus. And they set the overall mode your brain and body are in, rather than sending quick, precise messages to certain brain regions. Okay, but what brain systems are affected by serotonin? Well, the first one is your threat and emotion systems, which reside around the amygdala. The second one is the reward and motivation systems, which is in the ventral striatum. Also, your social memory system, which happens in the hippocampus. And finally, the evaluation and decision making systems, which happen inside the prefrontal cortex. So, what does oxytocin affect? Well, it affects how safe or threatening others feel to you, how rewarding social interactions are to you, who you remember as being significant, so who is socially important to you, and how social signals relate to your goals and your values. One important clarification: oxytocin does not create bonding by itself, but it strengthens whatever social connection is already forming by making certain people and certain social signals feel more important. But this does not judge whether that connection is healthy, but I'll explain this later in the video. So, connectedness is regulated by a biological system that alters safety, reward, memory, and meaning around specific people. So, why does this system exist? Well, humans are unusually dependent on one another. If you look at our infants, our children, they are born very weak. Our skills, our long-term skills, can take very long to develop. And historically seen, our survival really depended on each other. A single human, historically looking, used to be very fragile. But a coordinated group could be very strong. It could take down enormous predators like mammoths. This created an evolutionary pressure. Groups that bonded effectively survived, and they reproduced more reliably than groups that fragmented and fell apart. So, why was oxytocin selected here? Well, oxytocin was selected for evolutionary because it reduced fear within familiar groups, because it made cooperation feel rewarding, because it strengthens bonds through repetition and repetitious behavior, and because it makes separation emotionally costly. From an evolutionary perspective, oxytocin stabilizes group life long enough for cooperation to pay off. Okay, but what actually triggers oxytocin? Well, oxytocin release depends on conditions the nervous system can directly detect. So, the strongest triggers are physical touch that feels safe and familiar, repeated proximity with the same people, so being close to other people, shared physical activity, helping someone and seeing them affected by your help, so them noticing your help, caregiving over time, and reliably showing up with the same people, so being around the same people. All these triggers involve coordination, and coordination means that what each person does changes what the others should do. So in coordinations, action are timed relative to other people, effort affects a shared result, success depends on participation of others, of course, and absence or leaving your group can change the outcome. For example, if you look at training with someone else, with a partner on the same days, if you work on a project together and you have interdependent roles, so one role affects the other, but you have the same shared goal, raising children together, obviously, also running a business or a community activity together. And if you care for someone over time, for example, when someone is sick or when someone is very old, oxytocin increases in these contexts because the brain is tracking your concrete effect on others' nervous systems. And this process works both ways. So a bit of bonding lets people start coordinating, doing things together that matter. Coordinating people together increase your oxytocin, and then oxytocin makes the future coordination feel more natural and feel more stable. Once this loop starts, it becomes self-reinforcing, and this happens both in healthy but also in unhealthy groups, and of course this can be dangerous. Bonding does not come from words or beliefs, but it comes from repeated coordination where your actions reliably affect other people. Okay, so what does oxytocin subjectively feel like? Well, when it activates, you can feel calmer around familiar people, and their presence will feel safer, their approval matters to you, and their disapproval will hurt more to you. And when you separate with them, it will feel emotionally painful. These effects reduce internal friction within groups by lowering vigilance, which is the seeking for danger, by increasing reliance, which is the dependence or trust on someone else, and by prioritizing shared activity over threat monitoring. And this is the threat monitoring within groups to look if other people are dangerous. And this helps groups stay together over extended periods of time. But it also has its limitation, because oxytocin does not evaluate outcomes, but it strengthens your bonds based on familiarity, repetition, and shared action, but not the quality of the bonding or the relationship. So, what is the risk here? Well, because oxytocin does respond to repetition rather than values, you can bond strongly with groups that undermine your personal development or the development within the social systems you are in. Yeah, for example, if we look at groups that have a negative impact, they could be groups that normalize avoidance, groups that discourage putting effort in, groups that reward complaining, and groups that accept unhealthy behavior, like food, like no physical behavior, drug use, etc. Can be a lot of things. And over time, these behaviors will feel normal. The effort to be better will feel unnecessary. Leaving the group can feel threatening to you, and staying there feels safe, even though you might rationally know that this group is not good for you. One important note here, this is not personal weakness, it's just how this system has evolved. It shows the historical and evolutionary importance of the group for survival. So now let's look at how the group can shape how you think about things and your behavior. Well, your brain learns what matters from people you coordinate with a lot. So, for example, if the people around you train consistently, you will think training consistently is normal and you will value consistency. If they work very seriously, you will think that that's normal. You will feel like effort is worthwhile. If the people you hang around with avoid responsibility, avoidance will feel acceptable to you. And if the people around you complain a lot, the complaining will become habitual. So how does this happen exactly? Well, this recalibration happens gradually over time without your conscious control over it. Oxytocin increases the weight of your brain assigns to social signals. And over time, the group standards will begin to feel like your own standards. Now, it's important, of course, after we have talked about the historical and the evolutionary significance, to also look at modern life and why modern life confuses this system. The oxytocin system has evolved in environments with small groups, with repeated physical proximity to other people, with shared tasks and shared things to do. It evolved in an environment where we had shared consequences, and also in an environment where we had mutual dependency. And today the entire world is visible through social media and through technology. In one sense, the whole world has become one large tribe. And of course, this brings some real benefits, like you can get empathy and you can give empathy to a lot of people. Global cooperation can take place. We can have a lot of bigger groups that focus on the same problem together, and we can have moral awareness beyond our local groups. But of course, it also creates a biological mismatch, because our nervous system still expects reoccurring relationships, direct interaction with other people, shared responsibility, and clear social consequences to our actions. Modern life often provides constant social information through social media, emotional stories on social media, without any real involvement. Can give you the approval of total strangers without really having to do anything real for it. And it can give you connections without having to really work on something together. The bonding loop stays partially activated. People feel socially stimulated, but they don't feel really embedded inside a social group, inside a social structure. We feel emotionally engaged, but we do not feel needed. We feel, we are concerned, but we are not useful somewhere. A global tribe can expand empathy, but it cannot replace small, local, embodied groups where your effort actually matters to someone. So, now the connection between connectedness and meaning. Well, meaning stabilizes when others rely on you, when your effort changes outcomes, when your presence matters in the social group, and when your absence would be noticed. And that's how your brain tracks my life has impact. Oxytocin binds you to people you repeatedly do life with. Your nervous system adapts to their norms, to their social values, and you become more like the people you coordinate with. Your brain bonds to whoever you regularly coordinate your life with, and that bond gradually shapes who you become as a person. So now we know that connectedness is shaped by repeated coordination with other people. We know that the oxytocin system increases the importance your brain assigns to social interactions, and that over time the people you coordinate with shape who you become as a person. So now let's look at how to use this knowledge to become who you could be by applying psychology. So the first step is to map your current social groups. You have to see where your connection system is currently learning. So to do this, grab a pen of paper or use a Word document or whatever, and note who do you see every week. Also note how often do you see them, and then what do you do with these people? What do you actually do together? And it's important that you only count embodied context. So that is a situation where you are physically present, and it's not just you messaging with someone or you scrolling online or having any online interaction. For example, you can note that you're living with your partner or with your family, that you're working on site with the same co-workers, that you're training with the same group every Tuesday or every Thursday or whatever day, that you're seeing the same friend every weekend, and the people who you volunteer with every week. This can be a lot more, but just note your social interactions, how often you see them, and what you do with them. And from a biological perspective, these are environments your nervous system is already adapting to through repetition. And this is whether you choose them deliberately or not. And most people are shaped by far fewer environments than they actually think. Step 2 is to read your body's signals as feedback. Your connection system gives feedback through how your interactions with other people feel. Signals that the bonding loop is not fully engaging often will look like that you feel lonely even when you see a lot of people. It will feel like you're emotionally flat during or after social interactions. You can feel interchangeable, which means that you think or you feel like it wouldn't matter if you were here or you were not here. You can feel relieved when some social plan gets cancelled, and you can feel very socially exhausted without feeling fulfilled after a social interaction with someone. What this usually means is that you have little coordination in these social interactions, which was not doing anything together of importance. It also can mean that there are no shared responsibilities and that there are no real consequences for your absence or for the negative behavior you might show in this group. This does not mean that there's something wrong with you, but it just means that there are some things wrong with the social interactions you have. Some good bonding signals are that you feel calmer around certain people, that you feel slightly uncomfortable, or when you have the idea that you're letting them down, or that you're not conforming to the group norms, that you notice that you care about the feedback you get from the group, and that you realize that your absence would actually affect something in a negative way. So now that we've noted what social interactions we have, and now that we've noted what signals we are getting from these interactions, we can go on to step 3, which is to notice what your groups are shaping you into. Because where bonding occurs, learning will follow. So what do we have to observe here? Well, it's good to look at how effort is treated in the group. It's good to look at how responsibility is handled within the group. It's good to see how the people within the group respond to difficulties. And we can also look at what the group finds important. For example, do the people show up when they say they do? And do they do it on time? Does anyone address repeated cancellations or other norm offenses within the group? Is effort into good things acknowledged or ignored within the group? And are problems faced directly or are they talked around? But why does this matter? Well, whatever repeats without correction will become normal, because oxytocin increases how strongly your brain internalizes these patterns. And this is how group direction quietly becomes your personal direction. So now that we know what's important inside of your current social interactions, we can go to part 4, which is changing the structure. Now we can act on what you see and what you feel. I'm going to give you a few examples, a few common patterns that you can use in your own life. For example, if you have lots of social contact, but you still feel meaningless, Try to reduce low consequence interactions and try to add a role where someone actually depends on you. For example, go to a fixed training group or do a volunteer shift. The second one is if you are socially exhausted all the time, try to find fewer environments and try to find more coordination. For example, one very serious group instead of a lot of casual groups. So less friend interactions and more useful, serious business interactions, etc. The third one is if you're anxious in groups, you can try to find smaller, predictable settings with fixed schedules. For example, find a small team instead of a large open gathering. And the fourth one is if you are flat, emotionally flat across all settings, check whether your effort has real impact, whether the things you do really matter for the group. But if this feeling persists for months or even years, you might have to look at some additional support. So after you've found these situations, you can try to deliberately place yourself in environments with regular interaction, clear social roles, shared outcomes, and effort that accumulates over time. And this is how you feed the connection system correctly with good information. So now that we've found groups that are not helpful and found maybe some new social environments that are helpful for us, we can go to step 5, which is stabilize through usefulness. Because bonding strengthens through reliability and not through time and not through intensity. So how do you do this? Well, within the social environments you have chosen to be a part of and the ones you want to be a part of, show up consistently and on time if it's necessary. Also, do what you agreed to do so they can predict you. Handle responsibility without having to be reminded of that. And so that you can stay steady under pressure. And of course, there are a lot more behaviors, but I always tell people that it's good to behave as you would like others to behave. When others rely on you, your nervous system registers relevance, and that's how meaning comes from connectedness. So this is how you can change your social groups to be more in line with what you want and who you want to be as a person. And also how you can behave so that the social group will accept you and that you will be a useful part of it. So in this video we've learned the importance of connection in line with meaning. We have looked at the system that governs it, the Oxytocin system, and we've looked at how to use it to your advantage. So in the final video of this series we will look at how all these systems come together, how they interact, and also how they can constrain each other. We will look at how you can use the knowledge of the dopamine, the oxytocin and the serotonin system to create a life that is worth living, a meaningful life for you and for the people around you.